right. Hey everybody, I'm Leslie Youngblood. I am here today with Dawn Verbrigghe from Jottful. Hi Dawn.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. We had a couple of start and stops in terms of getting us chatting. And Dawn and Jottful were recently featured in our Tenacity Tales, and we learned a little bit about Dawn's journey and the impetus of Jottful. Dawn, I would love for you to kind of dive into more. Tell us about you, tell us about Jottful and what you guys do to help small businesses.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. My mother, it actually starts with my mother, right? That's where these stories start.
It sure does, always.
Always. She owns a really small bridal shop. And I have a background in graphic design and in marketing and in writing. And so naturally, I've been responsible for her website for years, right?
Sure.
And
how long ago did she start her shop, Dawn? How many years has it been?
Well, I think maybe at least 10 to 15 years. Wow, it's been a long time. And then, my uncle has a salon, same thing, right? Mm-hmm. If you have that skill set, you just end up building websites for family members. It's
right. Yeah. They all tap you first, like, Dawn, help us.
Exactly.
Of course I will, because you need this.
But what happens is that, you build the website for them and then you're just hope and pray they can maintain it themselves, but they never can. So they keep coming back to you. And in the meantime, you start to get a life, right? Mm-hmm. you have a child, you have a cat, whatever, and you don't have time to be updating your mom's website. Right. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, this is back in 2017. I just thought, my goodness, there must be a way for a business like hers to just have a website she can maintain herself. And so I was just looking around mostly to get out of this predicament.
Somebody save me.
Yeah, exactly. And I would check with sort of small design firms and agencies, but they were all charging $5,000 or more, which was just way too expensive for a company like my mom's.
Right.
So I was looking at all the website builder software. There's all that great software out there that people can use to DIY.
Like Wix, right? You're talking
Squarespace,
about Squarespace, yeah.
Weebly, which is owned by Square now, right? Like all of those are great tools. But the problem is, like, for most small business owners like my mom, and most small businesses under, say, 10 employees or self-employed, like the prospect of building your own website is just super daunting.
Right.
She doesn't have the time to do it, first of all. But then all of the stuff is a little bit confusing. Like, how does the technical stuff work? What's the difference between a domain registrar and a web host? And what's a content management system? And you don't understand how all those pieces fit together. It's pretty hard to build your own website. And especially if you don't have time to produce the content or learn how to use the software and so forth. So neither of the two options that were out there were really available, right? I thought, how am I going to get out of this? So there must be other companies, right, that struggle with the same problem my mom has. So I thought, well, why don't I see if there is a way to make software where we could apply a little bit of a service, right? So we could actually build the website for the small business owner. So we kind of, we get them past that initial hurdle of getting the website built. And then we do this co-maintenance with them. So we make it super easy for them to make basic text changes and basic image replacements so that they don't have to call us up and say, hey, on this page in the third paragraph, can you change these 4 words? Because it's just easier for them to make that change themselves than to call somebody up. So make it easy for them to do the easy stuff. And then just be there for the tougher stuff, like adding a new page or more technical stuff, and take care of all the technical stuff. So they don't have to figure out whether or not they renewed their security certificate for next year, because they do not know what a security certificate is.
Nobody really does.
Nobody does. So just take that off their hands and give them peace of mind, right? So I had this hypothesis that there were other business owners who had this problem and something like this could solve it. So I went to a trade show for her business. It's called National Bridal Market. It's held in Chicago.
I can only imagine the tulle and the chiffon and the flowers.
Totally. Totally. It was like a booth full of big fluffy dresses and then another booth full of big fluffy dresses. And I had a booth, but just at a table and like a laptop. And a little sign that said, I can make you a website.
That's awesome.
And I got the first half dozen customers from there. And this is before I said this is going to be a business.
Right.
And it's before I had built a product, right? Like it's very popular in software right now to try and sell something before you make it. right?
Right.
And you sell based off of a prototype. So I had hacked together a little prototype using just WordPress, right?
Wow.
Built some themes in WordPress. So we actually built the first half dozen customers' websites on WordPress.
Gotcha.
In this hacked together prototype. Then as soon as I realized there was a real business opportunity here, I became a real business and then hired an engineer to build a real product.
Gotcha.
And after about a year, we moved all those first half dozen customers onto our real product, and
Gotcha.
So that's how we started.
I love that, because I think a lot of times too, in what we've heard too, is like, use what's out there to test your hypothesis, because hiring your own engineer and then like building something and spending all that money, like, what if you do it and then there's no market for it? Or like,
exactly,
how are you going to pay for that if you don't have customers already? So I love that you use something that was out there, kind of tweaked it to suit your hypothesis and help these people. And then you're like, okay, this is viable. This is working. Let's go out and make our own.
And really use that opportunity to listen, and understand what the market needs. So to be honest, I actually went to that trade show with two hypotheses.
Oh, okay.
One was they need a website. And the second was they need appointment booking software. I was actually using the website as a vehicle to sell appointment booking software. Initially, that was my idea. But what I realized at this trade show, talking to real prospects, was that they had zero interest in appointment booking software.
Really?
People would come by and they would say, no, we don't need to book appointments online. Even though our brides are all, millennials,
of course.
Gen Z, we don't need to book appointments online, because in our office, like in our showroom, we have this really nice book. We have this really nice pen. And so we just don't need that. And I was like, okay, I disagree that you don't need this, but I'm going to listen to what you're telling me, which is that I need a website. I don't need appointment booking software. Fine. But it just became so clear that all the demand was for the website.
Wow.
Not for appointment booking software. And so I just said, that's what I'm going to focus on.
That's so important. And you moved fast too. Like, right. I think Roy will often say like, fail fast, quick, and fail fast, and then learn and just keep going, because you're going to have a wrong hypothesis, right? Like, you went in with this one hypothesis that was supremely right and one that wasn't. And it's okay if it doesn't work the first time. It's probably not going to work the first time, right? And so I think a lot of small business owners, or even people in general, you just get consumed with perfection and waiting until something's perfect, or don't want to fail and be wrong or embarrass yourself. And it's like, every small business owner that I know and I talk to has failed at something or isn't an expert at everything. And you can't be scared to go out there and try, because that's the only truly way you're going to learn and iterate. And I love that quote of yours that we put in Tenacity Tales. And it was about how iteration is constant. Like, you have to iterate, you have to change. And I think that's really interesting, especially for bridal shops too, because it's a very traditional category, really, like marriage and ceremonies, and it's steeped in all this tradition. And so maybe the way of thinking might be they might get stuck a little bit and think, oh, I don't need to do those online bookings. And I wonder, do you know if any of them now have online bookings? And you're like, I told you.
Since the pandemic, I think the future is racing, right? We see a lot of people moving to online appointment booking software, a lot of people moving to e-commerce. It's just happening. And people who sort of delayed even getting a website, or thought, well, I can just get by with a Facebook page. All of a sudden it's just happening, right? So we definitely see that happening. To go back to your point about iteration though, in software, there's this concept of an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. And for those of you who aren't in software, this is, I think it's a brilliant thing, which is, when you're building a business, you probably have a really big vision of what you imagine that business will look like a few years from now, right? But take that, especially if there's a product, take that product and break it down into what is the smallest thing that you could actually sell to a customer. So the sort of classic visual example of this is, if you want to help a customer get from point A to point B, and you think that the best solution for that is an automobile, maybe the first thing you sell is a scooter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you sell is like a motorcycle, and then you sell maybe a small car, and eventually you're selling a Hummer, right? But basically you're just starting with the thing that proves the hypothesis that people want to get from A to B and are willing to, you know, buy from you, and you can figure out how to reach those people. And once you've done that, well, yeah, then start adding features and making it more impressive and stuff. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs tend to be very product focused. And so they really focus on, you know, the features that are needed in this product, not realizing that they could actually start selling the product with fewer features.
Right. You could have money coming into you right now if you just let go and just trust the process and push that out and make that leap. And I think for you, Jottful was your second business. And so were you as nervous about Jottful, or did you feel like, I got this? And I feel like in Tenacity Tales, you even said, like, I was thinking I didn't want to do my own business. I kind of wanted to maybe lean into this other job, and you did it. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's so funny because I was less nervous about running a business the second time around, just because I had that experience before. So I knew how to do a lot of those things. Right. And just prior to joining or to starting Jottful, I had been the COO at another company. So I'd really effectively been running a business. So I felt pretty confident about that aspect of it. And I wasn't afraid of the idea of starting something.
Gotcha.
However, I was a very reluctant entrepreneur the second time around. And the reason why is because the first business was not a success. It became kind of like a minimally profitable kind of zombie business, right? that I eventually closed. But I spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting to minimal profitability, right? And I had lost all passion for it. I felt lonely. It's lonely being an entrepreneur. And it's lonely in a really small business, right? So I felt lonely. I had lost the passion for it. I went and worked for a bunch of other companies. I was happy about the consistency of the paycheck and the size of the paycheck, and that I got to work with other people that I liked on projects that were fun. And so I was in this position where I had this hypothesis for Jottful, and then I also had this potential pretty amazing job offer, and I was really weighing the two. And it was this mentor who heard me talk about both of them, and then just looked at me with this like really confused face and said, "But Dawn, you're an entrepreneur." And my reaction was, no. Like, I knew it. I just didn't want it to be true, because I knew how hard it was the first time around. Like, I just know how hard it is to not have cash in your personal bank account and to be constantly like sending it over to that business account, like making that transfer, to try and build this thing from scratch. And so I did go into this one with some, much clearer, like, borders, right? These are lines I won't cross. And these are the things that I'm going to prioritize, because I know that I need them from sort of my own, self-care.
Gotcha. So for somebody watching that maybe is like, oh no, I'm an entrepreneur too, and I'm just nervous. Like, what would you tell them? And then what would you tell them, like, not to do that you did the first time? Like, what were some of those things that you learned moving forward for Jottful?
Yeah. So first of all, like, if you are an entrepreneur at heart, like, I'm sorry on one hand, but on the other hand, like, it's just the most amazing ride, right? It's, you're very much living in the present and in the future at exactly the same time. It's really a fantastic journey. And if you have that itch, it's really hard for you to work somewhere else. Like, let's be honest, really hard. In terms of what I would, advise people, I would say, this is going to sound contradictory, but take the leap of faith, right? Don't sit there and spend all your time building spreadsheets. Build the spreadsheets. Yes. Build the spreadsheets. I built a lot of spreadsheets, but I actually took that first step, right? And so what I would advise people is to, on one hand, do the research. Make sure that in your heart you're making the right decision, and you have data to back that up, and you're not just, taking the data and finessing it to do what you want it to do, but like, you actually have real data. And then secondly, don't be afraid to dive in. Once you have that, go for it, and just trust that you've done the research and you know what you're getting into. And that's why I recommend trying to sell something before you build it.
Right.
Because then it just gives you that extra proof point. I think as an entrepreneur, you want to just constantly de-risk your business, right? De-risk.
I love that. And I always will tell people, like, what's the worst that can happen? You're probably not going to die, even if it fails. Like, right. Like, so can you live like thinking like you'll never know? Why not? Like, there's just really, you know, why the heck not? So I think that's awesome advice.
And I love entrepreneurs. I know you guys too, right? That's who you talk to all the time. But, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, so if you're a doctor, people always come up to you and tell you about the ailments that they have, right? And ask for your advice on what to do about them. If you're an entrepreneur, people always come up to you with ideas that they have and ask you whether or not this is a good idea. And the truth is it's really hard to evaluate an idea for a market about which you know nothing, right? But I find there's a huge difference between people who just come up with ideas, and then people who actually act on them.
Do it.
And I just have so much admiration for people who actually take that step and act on that idea and really build something that doesn't exist, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think right now, especially with the pandemic happening, and we've seen how small businesses have been harmed, some, you know, put out of business by the pandemic. And last week was Detroit Startup Week. And I know you spoke at that too. And one of the biggest things that I remember out of a session that I tapped into was they said that now is the perfect time to start a business. Like, because it's the perfect time. Like, if you're going to wait, number one, there's going to be no perfect time. And like you said, no perfect product, but like now would be an ideal time to do it. Really. Do you agree with that?
I think there are really a lot of benefits of starting in a recession. Yes. One of them is just reduced competition, right? Another one is it's easier to access customers through marketing channels when those channels are less saturated, right? When there's less demand in those channels, the prices go down. And you see this with online advertising right now. Online ad rates are down just because there are fewer people advertising, right? Also, it's just, it's a time when you can get some PR coverage, right? Because again, less competition. And it just gives you an opportunity to be under the radar for a while, which frankly is how every business starts out anyway, despite all of the myths of instant success, right?
We'll get there. We're going to
they all start off in a really slow growth pattern. And in a recession, that is the expectation anyway, right? When times are really flush and really good, people are like, why aren't you growing? You know, why aren't you 3x last year? Like, well, because I'm just starting out. You know?
I literally launched last week.
Give
me some time, Mom.
I mean, it's hard. Like, there's no real bad time to start your own business. I think most of it is really based on your own like personal and family position, right? Are you personally and use your family in the right place for it?